I have a short list of people I keep track of on YouTube so I can stay up to date on whatever insanity falls out of their mouths. The 20 some odd year old pastor Matt Powell is one of them, and he's been putting out various debunking attempts on evolution. So let's see what happens when you grow up without an actual education. This kid has been on my list for a while now, and his short videos that he does are kind of annoying. He's got a couple in particular, including this one that caught my eye. So let's see what he's got to say about genetics.
So the number one place that evolutionists go to genetically to prove evolution, quote unquote, is mutations. And they'll claim that as genes mutate over time, that means that you'll become a frog to a prince over millions of years. And they think that mutations somehow create new information.
Y'all see what I got to work with? Not even 30 seconds in, and there's already a whole hell of a lot to cover here. I'm just glad his original video is just shy of 6 minutes and he just didn't gish gallop the fuck away like his role model Hovind. Which reminds me, I've still got a couple of things that need to be worked on to cover that asshole too. Let's start from the top here. That whole frog to a prince thing because of mutations is a shitty straw man and a horrible oversimplification of the whole process here. Referencing an earlier video I did on the topic, evolution is changes in allele frequencies. Alleles are the things that determine your physical characteristics like hair color, skin tone, etc. Now these can be changed with mutations, but it takes more than one mutation for any noticeable changes here generally. It ain't like the X-Men, where the X gene pretty much rewrites your DNA to make you heal stupidly fast or shoot force beams out of your eyes. What actually happens is that over time these mutations accumulate and eventually lead to changes that result in the species itself changing or an offshoot that ain't able to reproduce with its parent lineage. This whole process continues constantly. Your kid ain't a carbon copy of you, Matt. He's got unique mutations that could become dominant eventually in the population. We don't think mutations can create new information, boy. We've seen it happen multiple times. My personal favorite is the plastic-eating bacteria. That's new information, kid, unless you can show that all bacteria had the gene for eating plastic from the get-go, and I'd bet you can't.
But what a mutation actually is information from one parent, information from another parent being put together, and it corrupts.
No, boy. What you're talking about is recombination, and it ain't corrupted in the way you think. Every kid is born with about 120 mutations, and most of them don't have any effect. And even the ones that do, negative or positive, don't usually affect the kid one way or the other much at all. Remember, boy, we're talking about changes accumulated over successive generations here.
That's what a mutation is a genetic corruption. It's deleterious to the gene code by definition.
No, they fucking ain't. Mutations are changes that fall into 3 categories: beneficial, neutral, and detrimental. Not all mutations are detrimental, though. I've already mentioned one here.
And so from generation to generation, we accumulate mutations as a human population. And as we add mutations or errors into the code, because that's what a mutation even is, as you add errors in, things get worse in our bodies from generation to generation. And so the supposed best evidence genetically for evolution actually is some of the best evidence for creation, and it proves that we would have had to start out perfectly genetically, and then when man sinned, it got corrupted, and then from generation to generation, our genetics would get worse over time.
There's that genetic entropy bullshit. First of all, there ain't no such thing as a perfect genetic code. You think that the first life forms had perfect genes and that after 2 people ate a magically cursed fruit, things went to shit and everything stopped and working and broke down? That's straight up wrong, kiddo. Show me any study indicating that and I'll show you how it's inexcusably wrong.
And so in 2003, the Human Genome Project was completed, and they found that we actually lose 1 to 2% of our genetic information per generation as human beings. And so, for example, my son has 1 to 2% less genetic information than I do, and his son will have 1 to 2% less genetic information than him. So as genetic information gets lost, as mutations accumulate in the genetic code, things will only get worse for us over time.
That ain't how this works at all, kid. You don't know what you're talking about. See, you do lose that information, but you replace it with new information from mutations, and those mutations will fall into one of those three categories I mentioned before. Good or bad mutations will be suppressed by natural selection, recombination with sexual partners in the population, so you won't see any real change, at any rate, not from generation to generation, since we don't really have a population of humans isolated for the time you would need for those changes to become dominant. At best, you'd see changes like the expanse. Martians can function on Earth, with the Martian Marines being better suited from training in 1G, but Belters can't function at all, hardly. And even then, there isn't enough time to speciate. Our lifespans are too long for that. Hell, kid, over the course of thousands of years of being isolated on the planet in various groups, we didn't have time to speciate because of our lifespans. The way things are going now, we won't speciate till we become a spacefaring race, and that'll still take a long damn time. You either don't understand what you were reading or you're lying, and I'm leaning towards the latter here, but only because I want to give you some benefit of the doubt that you can actually read.
Now, evolutionists claim that things get better over time, and that we started out simple and that we got more complex through mutations.
Better and more complex are mutually exclusive here, kid. Just because we went from simple to complex don't necessarily mean we got better. Hell, we still have that nerve that wraps around the aorta from the brain to the larynx. That don't scream intelligent design or being better in general.
But what mutations actually do is cause errors and problems in the genetic code, and that's why we have things like Down syndrome or even autism.
My son is on the spectrum, and the way you worded that makes me want to punch you in the throat. You're once again ignoring beneficial mutations, like the ones that break the protein in us called MYH16. Those mutations are one reason we have such big brains. Well, maybe not you, because you seem to be a dumbass. I'm going to cut a few more seconds because it makes me want to beat him more. Despite what you think, my son ain't broken, you fucking dickhead.
So when an evolutionist says that mutations are somehow proof that we're evolving, they don't even know, they're literally admitting that they don't even know what a mutation is. Because a mutation, by the very definition, is a copying error. That's what the definition of a mutation even is.
We know full well what mutations are. You assume they're all bad all the time, despite evidence showing they ain't. Mutations that increase bone density, allow populations to easily survive at altitude, or one that mitigates heart disease despite the risky diet. Hell, boy, even the ability to tolerate lactose is a beneficial mutation, so do us all a favor and shut the fuck up. Yeah, mutations are errors, but they ain't all bad.
So by all these errors, somehow we have a perfect genetic code for humans now.
Again, and I need you to really dig the shit out of your ears here, there ain't no such thing as a perfect genetic code. Those mutations you keep bitching about are what made us who we are over billions of years, one after another, in a chain of unbroken births in populations that survived every extinction event this planet has had. Maybe if you got an actual education instead of a crock of shit when you were little, you wouldn't be the ignorant dipshit you are today.
That's their logic, is that genetics mutated from a frog to a prince over millions of years. That is completely unscientific on every single level, and just the fact that somebody would think that mutations somehow cause perfection and that we would get a perfect human species millions of years later, folks, it just goes to show they don't even care what science is. If they cared, they would look at the definition of words before throwing out those words as supposed best evidence genetically for evolution.
Let's be clear here, kid. You don't know what the hell you're talking about. I've already covered why that frog to prince bullshit is wrong, what mutations are, and that there ain't no such thing as a perfect genetic code. Along with why genetic entropy is a crock of shit. You never got an actual education on this subject, which is why you're wrong, and it doesn't help that you've got your head shoved so far up Mr. Hoven's ass that I can't hardly tell where he ends and you begin. Your ignorance is inexcusable, as is every lie that you tell. Between the two of us, I'm the only one that knows the science, so let this be a rare learning opportunity for you. While scripting out this upload, I saw a video on Hoven's channel where you and he both offered challenges to debate people who know the subject better than both of you combined. Personally, I don't think anyone should debate Hoven because he's still in the middle of one he started over 2 years ago with Aaron, and until he finishes getting his ass kicked there, he ain't worth the time. If his position, and yours for that matter, had any leg to stand on, it wouldn't be a whole lot of him screaming nuh-uh and not citing anything that actually supports him. His response of burying that debate shows he knows he can't win and he won't go anywhere near it ever again. You aren't worth debating publicly either, since that would make your position seem legit when it ain't. But I'll tell you what I'll do. If you see this, which I doubt you will, but if you do, I'll let you pick a single topic to discuss in a video exchange format like when Hoven dug his own hole. You lead off. I'll correct you. You make whatever bullshit excuse you need to ignore my corrections, and then I'll close with a video on why you're still wrong. Give me the best you've got, kid. I'll set you straight with a steel-toed boot of factually accurate information, and as a bonus to your thin skin and tender ears, I won't even swear when I do it. So bring it on, boy.
And evolutionists always like to claim that natural selection somehow disproves God, and it proves that evolution is somehow true.
No, that ain't what is said ever. Natural selection is a demonstrable mechanism of evolution whether your imaginary friend exists or not. It was the first working mechanism of evolution discovered. Natural factors act on the organism, and if the organism is unsuited for whatever reason, it doesn't survive, but the ones that are good enough to get by do survive.
But just the phrase natural selection literally proves that the genetics have to do some selecting, or they have to make a choice. That's what select even means, hence the phrase natural selection. And so selection requires consciousness. Choices require consciousness. And it's not natural randomization.
No, there ain't a choice involved here, kid. Like I said, natural selection is just various environmental factors that act on the organism in question. There ain't a directing architect here. You never did take biology, did you?
God programmed our genetics to be able to make choices, and selection can only occur when there's a mind behind it. And so even the phrase natural selection points to intelligent design and disproves atheistic evolution at the fundamental of the phrase and of genetics.
No, boy, you're presupposing an imaginary friend of yours was responsible for picking genes. That's not what happens. And the fact you said that only highlights how little you know about this subject at all. Your stupidity needs to be corrected, and I honestly feel bad for your kids who will grow up in a household that stifles curiosity and critical thought and denies them the benefit of an actual education and a proper understanding of science. Maybe if they see you get corrected as a matter of public record, they won't wind up as ignorant as you. I look forward to you bringing the best you've got to me so I can give you the education that you were denied, kid.